Hey there, and welcome. Ever feel like you need a secret decoder ring just to read the news about public health? Yeah, it can be a super confusing world of numbers and jargon. Well, today, that all changes. We're going to open up a disease detective's toolkit and show you the essential measures you need to crack the case. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's start with a little pop quiz. When you hear experts talking about how frequent a disease is, which of these key measures are they using? You've got incidence, prevalence, mortality rate, and case fatality rate. Take a look. What do you think?
So this was a bit of a trick question, because the answer is actually all of them. And look, if you get this one concept, you're already way ahead of most of the headlines out there. Each of these numbers tells a totally different but absolutely crucial part of the story. And relying on just one, well, that can paint a dangerously misleading picture.
All right, so let's get our toolkit organized. We've got 4 essential measures we need to master. We've got incidence, prevalence, mortality rate, and the case fatality rate. Think of these as the 4 cornerstones that public health experts use to really understand what any disease is doing. So let's break them down one by one.
First up, let's talk about speed. When a new disease pops up, the biggest, most urgent question on everyone's mind is, how fast is this thing spreading? To answer that, we need a tool that's all about measuring the flow of new cases. And that tool is incidence. The key word here, the one I really want you to remember, is new. Incidence is all about the rate of new cases. It's a measure of risk. To make it super simple, think about a bathtub. Incidence is how fast water is flowing into the tub from the tap. It's not about how much water is in there already, it's all about the flow. But just knowing how fast the tap is running isn't the whole story, right? You also need to know how much water is actually in the tub. We need a snapshot, a picture of the total situation at this very moment.
And that snapshot? That's called prevalence. Prevalence measures the total burden. It counts all the cases, the new ones and the old ones that are still around, at one specific point in time. So if incidence is the flow from the tap, prevalence is the total amount of water sitting in the tub. It tells us just how widespread the problem really is right now.
And putting them side by side like this makes it so clear. Incidence is all about speed, the flow, which helps us understand the risk of getting sick. On the other hand, prevalence is about the overall burden, the total volume, giving us that snapshot in time. One's a rate, the other is a total. And you absolutely have to have both to see what's really going on. Okay, so we've talked about how we measure cases. Now we've got to turn to the most serious outcome, death. And just like with cases, there are 2 very different ways to measure this. And I got to tell you, confusing these 2 is probably one of the biggest mistakes you'll see out there in the news.
First up is the mortality rate. I want you to think of this as the big picture, 30,000-foot view. It answers the question, what's the risk of dying from this disease for anyone in the entire population, sick or healthy? It's all about the disease's total impact on society as a whole.
But now, let's zoom way in with the case fatality rate. This number is super specific. It only looks at the people who are confirmed to have the disease. It answers a much more personal and frankly scarier question. If I actually get this disease, what are my chances of dying from it? This tells you how severe the illness itself really is.
And this slide lays out the crucial difference perfectly. For the mortality rate, you divide the number of deaths by the entire population. But for the case fatality rate, you divide the number of deaths by only the number of confirmed cases. That bottom number, the denominator, changes everything. This is exactly why a super rare but incredibly deadly disease could have a very low mortality rate for the whole country, but an absolutely terrifying case fatality rate if you're one of the unlucky few to get it.
So let's bring it all back and put our full toolkit together. We've got tools to measure the speed of an outbreak and the total burden it's placing on a community. And we've got tools to measure the risk to all of society versus the risk to an individual who gets sick. Not a single one of these numbers tells the whole story on its own. A real disease detective knows you need all 4 to get the complete picture.
This table really just ties it all together with a bow. You want to know how fast something is spreading? You look at incidence. You want to know how widespread it is right now? That's prevalence. Wondering about the overall risk to society? That's the mortality rate. But if you want to know how deadly it is if you actually get it, you need the case fatality rate. 4 different questions, 4 totally essential tools.
So here's the bottom line. This isn't just some boring academic exercise. Knowing what these 4 terms really mean, well, that's a practical skill. It literally empowers you.
It lets you look right past the screaming headlines, analyze the data for yourself, and become a more informed person who can actually understand the stories that are shaping our world.
When you get right down to it, data is just a language. It tells a story, sure, but the numbers themselves, they don't have an opinion. Now that you know how to speak their language, the real question is, the next time you see the data, what story will you see?